Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karla Davis Mason, and I'm here with my brother, Anthony Davis.
Yes.
And we are here to talk about the epidemic of human trafficking. It's something that both of us are very passionate about. My brother has been an abolitionist for many years, and it's something that I want to do more about. I'm tired of looking at the news and hearing about another young lady that's been missing, another young lady who is being subjected to, sexual torture every day, another young lady who is taking her life because even after surviving human trafficking, to deal with the pain is something a whole nother story. So we want to bring more awareness, more light to this subject, and have my expert brother talk about it. We're just going to have a conversation about it, and in hopes that we can, just bring more awareness to it and more light and more solutions, be a part of the solution. So I'm going to let him talk about what he does and his titles, and give you some background about him.
All right. Well, it's good to sit here with you, sis, and talk about something that is really affects everybody, more so than we ever know. I've had the opportunity to work in human trafficking now since about 2007, 2008. Prior to that, I dealt a lot with domestic violence. And serving on the Orange County Domestic Violence Task Force, I got to see a lot of familiar family situations between, spouse and husband or boyfriend and girlfriend, same-sex and heterosexual couples, and the volatility that happens between people with domestic violence, and realizing how much violence was actually in relationships, whether it's verbal, nonverbal, financial, physical. And during that time, I had an opportunity to talk with a gentleman named Tomas Lars, and we began to sit down and talk about the correlation between domestic violence and human trafficking. And I didn't really realize that there was a correlation, but again, in domestic violence, you're talking about husband, wife, or boyfriend, girlfriend, but in human trafficking, you're talking about the pimp and the girls. But it's still like a relationship because they call him daddy, and they are subjected to him. It's kind of one-sided. But, I began to realize as we talked that this is something that's really going on. It used to be that we thought human trafficking was a third world issue in Vietnam and other places in Asia. But we found that, no, it's here in America because, number one, human trafficking is pushed by two things: power and money. Money is the biggest thing. When these pimps, you think about a pimp, and we have the old ideology of what a pimp looks like, having this stable of girls. But now it's more organized. You've got not only pimps that are still doing it, but you've got organized crime, you've got gangs, you've got all these different subgroups that now realize that, hey, if I can get a girl and sell her body, unlike drugs that you can sell once, guns you can sell once, you can sell a girl 20, 30 times a day. And so when you think about it, now we have this demand where people are looking for sex and willing to do just about anything to get it. And so my involvement was going from domestic violence to human trafficking. We have an organization called Florida Abolitionists. And I began working with them and coming onto the board. And after a couple of years working with them, I became the board chair. And as a young organization, we began trying to really work on identifying the problem of human trafficking and then rescuing as many girls and boys, men and women as we could. And what we found is anybody that was under the age of 18, they were entitled to have a state agency we call DCF come in and work with the girls or boys and help them out. But anyone that was over 18, there were pretty much no services for them. They were there. And for the most part, law enforcement saw them as prostitutes. And that's the way they looked at it. And so our organization, Florida Abolitionists, began this whole process of training and educating the community and working with church organizations, non-government organizations, government organizations, and law enforcement to try to bridge them together to realize that this has to be a team approach toward trying to stop this. What we found in the process is, wait a minute, this isn't something that's a small caliber. This is large. This is becoming an epidemic. Right now we're talking maybe 150, $200 billion a year industry. And, the litigation on it in terms of prosecution is so time consuming that what happens is you find that if somebody's arrested, say a John or a pimp is arrested, they can bypass their speedy trial. And now you got a young lady whose life is on the hook for 2 or 3 years waiting on a court resolution. A lot of times she's ready to leave. And plus, they don't really last in this thing. So our organization has really been focused on trying to rescue and restore them back to a state of normalcy. And so there's so many things that are involved in it. So after serving on the board for 8 years with Florida Abolitionists, I moved now to a different capacity where I'm now the national lead trainer and ambassador for human trafficking. And what that entails is taking us from a local organization to a national organization and making sure that we're educating the right people. We're looking at educating corporations. We just recently got legislation in the state of Florida where all hotel employees and massage employees have to be trained. And so they came to us and asked us to be a part of that training. So that training began October 1. So that's a start. And now we're all school kids from K to 12 who receive some type of training or education every year of their school. So with that, and now, here with you in Atlanta, we had a chance to meet with one of the organizations that we're working with here in Atlanta. But that's where we are, and that's what I do. That was a lot of words, but to get it all out, to give people a background as to how we started and where we're going, that's what it takes.
Okay. When you said women are seen as prostitutes, is that why it's so hard to charge these Johns, because the woman is seen as the victim or the person who's doing something wrong, the criminal? So if you see a woman if you guys rescue a woman who say is 20 now and she's been doing this for years, and she's talking about a gentleman who has forced her to do this, so they're saying, well, if you did it once for money, then you're a prostitute, so we really can't charge these men?
See, let's look at the law. If you're under 18, then you can't give consent.
Okay.
But if you're over 18, we have to prove force, fraud, or coercion. In other words, somebody has to force her, frauded her into it, connived her into it, or put her in a situation where they made her do it. And so what happens is people don't look at how long they might have been on the streets. They look on the fact that they're on the street, and current law says, well, prostitution is against the law. So they'll arrest her and the John and criminalize both of them. Okay. When essentially what you're saying, hey, if she'd been out there and somebody had been pimping her for years, she was actually a victim underage. Right. And so she should be seen as such now. Just because she's over 18 doesn't change the scope. And a lot of times we think that they just got there by themselves. They haven't. Somebody has put them out there, but law doesn't look at. That's why our big push has been to really educate law enforcement. That has been big because we've had to change the mindset of law enforcement to look at it differently. Just like with domestic violence, it used to be a cop got called to a house, they tell the guy to go leave for a while or walk around the block and come back. Now he can actually be prosecuted.
Okay. So, and how are these women being taken? If they're not going voluntarily, how are they just being kidnapped off the street? You hear stories and you wonder. So these are not just young girls who are running away and rebellious. Sometimes they're innocent people walking through the street.
Most of them are recruited.
Okay.
An obvious scenario would be a group home or a teen center or some place where children who are in foster care or at a halfway house, they'll send somebody in who will recruit them, who entice them, say, hey, I got an opportunity for you. I got a deal for you. It may, come through something that is unlike the idea that they're going into prostitution or going to be forced. They're providing an opportunity for them. And then once they're taken out of that situation and they believe the hype, then they're brought in and they may think, hey, what am I doing? Where is this job that you provided me or promised me? And then that's when they change and say, no, we're actually going to use you for prostitution. And they get people that have low self-esteem, who don't have a strong family support system, who are out there who the society probably won't even know that they're gone. And so, or they'll use drugs to entice them. Or they'll come through, modeling or any type of, and this is what gets a lot of girls, they're always looking for the opportunity to model or to do photography. And so they think, well, hey, I can make it too. And so they're lured in thinking that that's what they're going to get. And then on the other side of that, that's when they're able to snatch it. Those are done by what we call Romeo pimps. The other side of that are gorilla pimps, are those that just snatch girls from the street. And those are girls that are taken by opportunity. In other words, they are women who might be out somewhere by themselves or may fit a certain profile. So the pimp just says, hey, I'm going to snatch them up and take them into it. And either way, they're forced to be a part of that. There's not something that they want to do.
Yeah, I shared with you a story that happened to my daughter. Sometimes we think these are women who come from dysfunctional homes and, women who are running away or rebellious. But I shared with you a story with my daughter who was going to, come from a two-parent household. And we've talked to her about, stranger danger and finding herself in dangerous situations. And her freshman year of college, she was in Chicago walking around downtown. And my daughter is another young lady who's wanted to be a model and an actress.
Yeah.
And she was approached by a gentleman who told her all the right things. I can make you into a model. You're gorgeous. You're beautiful. Just come meet with this gentleman. We'll send you to LA. We'll give you this opportunity, that opportunity. And thank God she had the presence of mind to tell me about it. And, as a parent, of course, your antennas go up when you hear stuff like that. So I went to so this gentleman told her to meet at a certain place. Before we can even leave home, he changed the location. And before we can even get to the second location he gave us, he changed it a couple of times. So now, red flags are going, I'm seeing red flags. But my daughter is still, they're still believing,
Right.
The person who's made all these promises. Long story short, the gentleman, place we ended up meeting was a public library. They didn't have a suite. They didn't have an office. He was not legitimate. But at no time did the, bells go off for her. And I think sometimes our young girls are, they're tricked into these situations.
Yeah, they're caught up in the pipe dream.
Yes.
The idea that someone acknowledges that they're pretty, that they would be a good model, an opportunity that comes. And, that's the idea of a lot of young, boys and girls. And unfortunately, at that mindset and the age they are, we see it. Mm-hmm. But, we too were that age at one time and, may have overlooked some things. But the idea is that that's how they lure them in. It's like bait. Mm-hmm. They're going to use a photography situation. They may use... in schools, they may bring another young lady that looks like she's in high school, or they may bring a friend, or now they may, fish you out on Facebook, find some that, and then they'll send a profile to you that seems to be the guy or the girl that's a good friend, or, something to catch them. Or they'll catch them in the malls, or catch them by themselves. I mean, pimps have historically always had this psychological profile. You look for the young lady that, low self-esteem, doesn't look up, may not say a lot, is walking by herself. They don't want the loud, boisterous ones. They just want somebody to sit. And so they know that, hey, if I throw photography out there, I may not get everybody, but I will get some folks. Mm-hmm. And most, a lot of times people look and they say, well, this girl isn't attractive that they grab, or this girl is, or this. It's not about how they look, because, the guys want to have sex. They're not really looking at a pretty girl. They're looking for somebody who will do what they want to do. Mm-hmm. And
forcibly or willingly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And your daughter, my niece, is just like so many other young ladies. They buy the hype because they want to believe that somebody is legitimate. They're not conditioned enough to know that, hey, no, that's not true, or that's not right.
Something doesn't seem right about the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a website out there. There's a place called East Coast Talent. And if you went to eastcoasttalent.com, you saw a website that was a true modeling website. But if you put an S on the East Coast Talents, it took you to another site, but it was actually a pornography site where they were recruiting the girls to do pornography films, smut films, and that nature. Mm-hmm. So they piggybacked off the one legitimate place and just added an S. Mm-hmm. And there's a young lady that told her daughter came in, and they recruited her when she was under 17. As soon as she turned over 18, where she could be an adult, then they lured her down and got her in, and then, had her go through a lump of stuff that looked legitimate. Next thing you know, they were drugging her, and she was taking pictures and doing pornography. Mm-hmm. These guys are smart, and we have to make sure that we educate our kids. With social media today, there's so much phishing and catfishing that's going on, and you can make up a profile, and as long as our kids are giving up information, as long as they're gullible to believe that somebody will come and find them, everybody wants to believe that pipe dream. The sad part of it is, on the other end of that, if it's not legitimate, that's when they're caught. Mm-hmm. And once they get in, it's not easy to get out, because now they'll use stuff against you. Say they'll use the fact that, they'll blackmail you. Mm-hmm. I know your mother, father, sister, brother, whatever, and they'll say, hey, we'll hurt them, or we'll do something to them. Or if they've already taken some pictures, they'll say, hey, we'll expose you to your family. Mm-hmm. And so because of the fear of that, these girls will then go along thinking, okay, I'll just do a little bit, or, I just have to strip, not realizing that they're being lured in to the market. And that's why some of them that come in, they're gang raped, they're broken down. That's why they call it a stable, because they're like cattle to the pimp. They call it, instead of inside there, you got who's called the bottom bitch. She's the one that's in charge. She's usually started on the street, but now she runs the girls. And they may gang rape them, they may drug them, they may do whatever they have to do to get them to go along with what they want.
Yeah. And I've heard stories of young women who've been lured by other friends from high school, and you think they're my age,
Right.
And, they have them come to a party or somewhere with them, so yeah, our young girls just have to be on guard. They really do, with the friends that they keep, the people they're around, the places that they go. It's just,
and sometimes their friends do it because the pimp has threatened to hurt them or hurt them in their family if they don't go out and recruit somebody. So they're innocent in the fact that they wouldn't normally do that to their other friends, but they're being forced to. And then some of them, like, with Stockholm Syndrome, once they get in, they actually believe that. Because check this out. These pimps, you would think these girls would be ready to run. But one thing these guys provide is, if they say they're going to do something to the girl, to include beat them, they're going to keep their word. A lot of these ladies have been in situations where they don't have a man in their life who has ever kept his word. So although it seems crazy that, okay, he says he's going to beat you and you still want to be there, it's because he's true to his word. He takes care of them when he says he's going to. He provides for them. And so there's this love-hate relationship. The problem is, they use these girls, they see them as disposable. And so when they fulfill the obligation or they no longer become an asset to the pimp, they discard them.
You mean kill them?
Well, kill them, drop them on the street somewhere. A lot of times if they're drugged out, they're going to end up committing suicide, or they're going to end up living on the streets, or they may just turn to prostitution because that's all they know.
That's all they know. Yeah. I was just reading an article about a young lady in Houston who was rescued. Well, they found her in a park, drugged and abused, but the pain, her parents said she could never really get over all the trauma, so she took her own life. It's just, we don't realize how broken they are. When
you're told
really
you're
sad.
nothing, and then you value yourself to some degree, and then somebody takes that away. There's nothing left, and when you feel you can't exist outside of what you've been, a lot of cultures, if a girl is shamed because of sex, she's shunned by society. And so we're talking about girls, we're talking about boys, men and women, and again, right now we're talking sex trafficking, but there's labor trafficking, where these kids or people are forced to do jobs or to do work, migrant workers whose IDs and passports are taken, people who are brought over here for job opportunities, and then they're forced to, to work all kind of ways. And it's not just in America, this is across the whole world.
It's not new. This is not a new thing, is it? Or is it
This
just
is
becoming more of an epidemic?
I think education is getting out there more, but it's always existed. But again, we've in the United States tried to overlook the fact that we had an issue here. It was always something that happened in other countries. And then when we realized it was happening to our own girls, and then the little blinders are taken off, and people are starting to say, ooh. But by then, but pimping has been around since the beginning of time.
Why do we hear more about, I've just heard about human trafficking like in the last 10 years,
Because in the United States, we finally realized that it wasn't something that happened abroad, that it's something that happens here. And then everybody wants to say, well, it's not that bad of an issue. We thought we could take care of it. But then, listen, the demand for sex increases. Remember, there is no trafficking if there's nobody to buy it.
Right.
And so with pornography coming around and more access to pornography and people becoming more fixated on having some type of sex or deviant sex, the best way to do it is to buy these girls. When you got places like Backpage and other online sites that advertise girls, young men and old men, people who, older men who want young girls, who think they, pedophiles, they're able to just select from what they want. And so now we've realized, wait a minute, this is increasing all the way around. A lot of people try to say, like the guy in the White House, that it's smuggling. It's not smuggling. Smuggling is just taking somebody across the border. Human trafficking is using somebody for sexual exploitation. You're making money off of them. You're forcing them to do something. And people say, just like domestic violence, why don't they just leave? You can't leave when you're dealing with people who are controlling you. You may have a Russian organization, a Chinese organization, a Japanese organization, where you're in the massage parlors. These are cruel people that bring whatever goes on in their country into the United States, into the subcultures, and then they snatch these girls. And it wasn't until, like you said, we started getting blonde hair, blue eye girls that all of a sudden, hey, we need to do something about it. As long as those little brown girls, as long as it was overseas, it wasn't a problem. But now the little Caucasian girls are being taken. And little smart ones, like you say, it doesn't have to be that they come from the hood or they don't have any family. These guys who want sex, it's like a menu when you go to a restaurant. You say, hey, this is what I want. They may want a 13-year-old blonde hair. They may want an 18-year-old blonde hair or brunette or something. And whatever they want, these pimps know, hey, if you're going to pay the money, I'll get it. And now you've got organized crime and gangs in it. They realize, man, this is money.
More lucrative than selling drugs and ammunition, like you said. Yeah. What's the worst thing you've seen?
Well, all of them are bad, but I think the worst thing I saw was a young lady that was rescued, and not only was she physically, sexually molested, but she was literally beaten almost to death. And when you look at somebody that looks at you and their eyes are crying for help, and you see, and you're trying not to let your face show her what you think you see, because you don't want her to realize, oh my God, what am I looking at? And just sitting there and then asking God, what are the words that you say? Because, being a man, that was a man that did that to her. So I'm the next man to come around and I say that I'm going to help. And will she believe me? Does she even trust me? And, it's just being there to offer and just telling somebody. And I just said, I think I had something like, listen, I love you. You're going to be okay. I promise. Not knowing if I could satisfy that or to get the services to make it happen, but knowing that we had enough good people who were volunteering that, if I did make this promise, that there were those that would help. I mean, I've seen those situations with human trafficking as well as domestic violence, seeing women who were coming to the shelter who were just been beaten mercilessly by their husbands. And your heart goes out. And as a man, again, if it's mostly men that do this, I'm looking at what can I do to stop the bleed? What can I say? And one of the things we say to the girls that, many people don't realize is we tell them we're not law enforcement, because they've been told to hate law enforcement. They've been told that law enforcement is only going to use them for prosecution. And they told, if you tell anybody anything, we're going to hurt you, we're going to come out to your family. What we have to say is, I'm just here because I care. I'm here because I care. And, I've seen people that come in so stoned on drugs, their eyes look like they're just rolling in the back of their head because they've had to do this, or this was either done because they wanted to numb themselves from what was happening, or it was done to keep them so they could just lay there and men could just come and empty themselves in them. And I must remind too, they're boys. We did, part of our training process came from a case in Pasco County where one of the sergeants out there rescued a 12-year-old boy in a hotel because he had been brought into someone in the hotel. The hotel staff didn't recognize it, but somebody else who was a guest heard him whine or moaning and called the police, and they came. And the deputy told me when he was in the hospital room and he's sitting there, he's laying on the gurney, but from his rear end, he was just bleeding profusely because his uncle had pimped him out.
Yeah. So pedophilia is nothing new, but it seems like there's now this huge this huge thirst for it, and even you were saying before, infants. That there's this fetish for kids as young as 1 and 2, and
Well, see, pedophilia has been around. So you're looking at men or women who like kids, but they're not trying to sexually get over on it. They just want to satisfy and gratify themselves. But now traffickers have seen that there is a market for those who desire kids. And so now they get the kids so the kids can be exploited. That's where you see a lot of families, a lot of single mothers are down who use their kids either as a part or for drugs or for something because of the perverts that are out there that want to see that deviant sex. When you're looking at the average age being 12 to 14 that girls are brought into this, and you're looking at kids who are being, taken as babies and, 7 and 8 years old. I mean, you almost want to be afraid to take your kids or let them go anywhere in society. But the biggest thing is education. Not only educating our young folks, but educating our community. Because when you see something that looks strange, what do? Oh, well, that looks strange, but I don't know. No, call 911.
Yeah. You don't want to profile necessarily, it's like we're between a rock and a hard place. We don't want to profile and say, well, this person looks based on, whatever their ethnic background or, how they're dressed, because as working in the travel industry, we're taught, be sensitive to certain cultures, don't profile, but on the other hand, look for this, look for that. If something looks strange, so I know personally, I felt like I didn't want to embarrass someone or I didn't want to profile or I didn't want to bring attention, but I guess we have to err on the side of caution.
And you'll see a lot of mixed race cultures or kids and families. And oftentimes, if you look at the interaction between them, get past the color and look at the interaction, there's always going to be something subtle that will push you about something that's strange. She doesn't fit with him. Not that she's a different race, because you can have a lot of that.
Right.
But she doesn't fit. She just looks to be there. She's afraid to move. She doesn't want to really, she's forcing a smile. These type of subtle things. Because kids that are comfortable with the person they're with, they don't have any problem. It doesn't matter about color. So we get past that thing. But we look at those other subtleties that, okay, she's just sitting there. She's looking up at them. Yeah. And, I tell people, don't be a hero and run up and rescue or do anything, but take note. And take note as if it was your child. Hey, I'd rather somebody come up to me and question, is this your granddaughter, your grandson, or whatever, and prove that than to not have somebody do something. It's just like, if you don't sign the back of your credit card, ask me for my ID. I don't have a problem with you carding me if I know that I'm older, because I know that you're doing your job. Just don't let it go by.
Yeah. One thing I want to say to young people out there is be so careful. Sometimes we get in conversations with people and we get comfortable. And I hear sometimes on the plane, people giving so much information. Where they live. And a person's nice. Oh, where do you live? Where are you from? And they just willingly. There's nothing wrong with being, it's not rude to say, people ask all the time when we lay over, what hotel are you guys staying at? Oh, I'm not sure. We give too much information. And you don't know who you're talking to. Someone can look like Santa Claus and, and be a pimp or be someone who wants to kidnap you. So, we have to be careful with the information we give out in person or on the internet,
Social media has been a crutch. It can be a plus, but it can also be a crutch. Our kids they give out to them, where are you going? My parents are gone, or this or that, or I'm lonely, this and that. Well, these trollers look for this situation and they come right in with profiles or calls. And like you say, when you meet someone, you don't have to get into it. You have to think about, why is this person asking me this? Is it necessary to know where I'm from or what I'm doing, specifically? Well, I'm from Chicago. Chicago's a big city. But when they start saying, well, what side and where are you? You have to teach your kids to not be afraid to question and say, why are you asking me all these questions?
Yes.
There's nothing about it's not being rude.
It can be a matter of your life.
And especially when they're young and they're going to be by themselves. You have to teach them to question and say, no, I don't think that's necessary. What I will give you is my parents' number, or I will, we can wait till my parent comes or something. We have to teach them to be respectful, but to also be alert of what's happening. Especially because once you're gone, it's harder to get you back. And then if we do get you back, we're trying now to establish support groups for parents who have kids who have been trafficked, support groups for teens before they get trafficked so they can talk to each other. And we're really putting a big correlation or collaboration between our churches and law enforcement. We have to work together. One of our successes in our organization with Florida, United Abolitionists, is that when law enforcement goes out, they call us to go with them. And we'll go, and so they'll take the bad guys and we'll take the girls and give them backpacks and provide them with, little stuff that they don't have access to. Sweats, toothbrush, flip-flops, some deodorant, just little things that are basic to us. But to them, they've been deprived or they've had to use what was provided for them. We take them somewhere to get clothes. We'll give them the card and allow them to pick their stuff because they haven't been able to do any of that. These kids everything they've had has been taken away from them. And then if somebody's over 18, we think, well, you can get over, no, we're there. And we tell them, look, we're here for a lifetime. Will we be? It depends upon them. With email, you can have email friends forever. But we let them know that we're not the last face that you're going to see. We're not coming in just to get the information and discard you. We're here because we want to help you.
I'm so proud of you and what your work. But I want to ask you personally, does it ever get for counselors and mentors and rescuers, does it ever get, you see trauma day in and day out, and you're always providing help and giving advice and carrying the burden. Does it ever get overwhelmingly heavy? And how do you guys deal with that?
You can't help it. If you're human, you're going to be affected. I mean, you're crying on the inside anytime you see someone, and you sometimes want to do more than you're really able to do because, you know, being in that position, you just want to do everything. You have to have an outlet. You have to be able to realize that, okay, as I'm doing this, I have to find a way to digress. I have to find a way to unwind. I mean, as a previous former investigator, seeing, you know, babies and doing autopsies and stuff, yes, you get affected. If you compartmentalize, it's going to come out somehow. And so we really, as an organization with more volunteers, we promote that we talk to each other. We do have on staff folks that are counselors that are there for primarily our victims or survivors, but they're also there for us. We've got organizations in Orlando that provide free services for us, like massages or something, just to help somebody get through it. I mean, you have to know what you can get through. And if you're married, you have to share information. You don't want to just keep it in because it will eat you up. And you will find yourselves in a situation where sometimes you can be overly consumed or overly engaged. You have to know when to step back. You know, and that's the hardest thing because, you know, you start something, you want to finish it, but you have to learn to say, okay, I can only do so much. That's why the collaborative effort really works. As I spoke to the group yesterday with non-for-profits, find the niche that you do and then share with them the other people that do the other things so that you can share in the recovery instead of feeling you have to do it all yourself.
Okay. Now, before we close, what do we want to say to young women who, to prevent any young woman from being lured into human trafficking, from being just prevent them from becoming victims? I would like to just say to young women, you know, if you first of all listen to your gut. If something seems too good to be true, then it probably is. Okay, do your research and talk to another adult. Okay, talk to someone who can give you more insight. You know, whatever, I don't know, you can maybe give some more advice as to how we can keep young women from falling into that trap.
Well, it's like you say, but, you know, no matter what your background is or what you've been through, you have to know that you're valuable. And you're valuable to yourself. Don't let someone else make a determination as to who you are or what you can be. You have to know that you are. You know, we all are missing something. We all got broken pieces. We all got a past. But we all got a right to live. We got a right to succeed and to make it. And so take care of yourself. If something is right, seek out that help. As bad as it may seem, even if you made a mistake and got yourself in a situation or with someone and you think, man, I can't get out.